Top 20. Secretly bisexual, homosexual and lesbian stars of golden age. Hollywood that will shock you. Welcome to Uncovered Tinseltown Uncovered, where we reveal the untold stories Hollywood tried to bury. In this shocking expose, we uncover 20 of the most iconic stars from the golden age who secretly lived as bisexual, gay, or lesbian, forced to hide their truth in an industry built on illusion. From leading men with double lives to legendary women defying norms behind closed doors, the secrets we reveal will change how you see old Hollywood forever. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment below. Which of these revelations surprised you the most? Walter Davis Pidgeon. Born September 23, 1897 in St. John, New Brunswick, was known for his refined presence and dignified performances in films such as Mrs. Miniver, 1942, and Madame Curie, 1943. While he built his public image around noble leading roles and maintained a traditional Hollywood marriage to Ruth Walker from 1931 until his death in 1984, accounts from Hollywood insiders tell a more complex story behind the scenes. Scotty Bowers, a well-known figure in post-war Hollywood's underground sexual network, claimed that Pidgeon was one of many prominent actors who sought the companionship of men during a time when it could destroy one's career. Bowers detailed in his memoir how Pidgeon regularly paid for male companionship despite projecting an image of heterosexual family life. Though Pidgeon never publicly addressed these claims, he was reportedly part of a quiet yet expansive circle of closeted stars who had to balance personal desires with the rigid expectations of 1940s studio-controlled Hollywood. Pidgeon's legacy remains largely intact, due in part to the discretion of that era and the absence of social media scrutiny. However, his alleged bisexuality highlights the immense pressure faced by stars to hide their truth. He passed away on September 25, 1984 at the age of 87, never confirming or denying the persistent rumors. In modern times, his name is frequently included in discussions about the hidden LGBTQ+ lives of golden age actors, reminding us of the silent costs of stardom in an unforgiving era. Greta Lovisa Gustafsson. Born September 18, 1905 in Stockholm, Sweden, became a Hollywood legend, renowned for her beauty mystique and silent allure. From her debut in silent films to iconic performances in Camille 1936 and Ninotchka 1939, she crafted an enigmatic persona that captivated millions. But beneath the cinematic elegance lay a personal life shrouded in secrecy and layered with whispered truths. Garbo famously avoided publicity and never married, fueling decades of speculation about her private relationships. While she had many male admirers, including actors like John Gilbert, she consistently rejected proposals and was known for cultivating deep, emotionally intense connections with women, including Mercedes de Acosta and playwright Salka Viertel. Letters revealed later in life hinted at an affection for de Acosta that surpassed friendship, suggesting romantic overtones long hidden from the public eye. She was intensely private, once telling the press she wanted to be left alone, a quote that further enhanced her legend. Garbo's refusal to conform to gender expectations extended beyond her romantic life. She often wore trousers and men's tailoring at a time when doing so was considered radical, a visual reflection of her rejection of societal norms. While she never openly identified as lesbian or bisexual, the evidence gathered through correspondence and testimonies strongly suggests she found intimacy with women more profound and emotionally secure than with men. Garbo retired from acting at just 35 and spent the rest of her life in seclusion, passing away in 1990 at the age of 84. Her story remains emblematic of how stardom in old Hollywood demanded silence, especially for those whose truth diverged from accepted norms. Greta Garbo's legacy is not only one of cinematic brilliance, but also of quiet resistance in a time of strict conformity. Edward Montgomery Clift. Born October 17, 1920, in Omaha, Nebraska, was more than just a screen idol. He was a complex figure in Golden Age Hollywood, whose brilliance on screen masked deep personal turmoil. Known for his emotional vulnerability and method acting, Clift gained acclaim in films like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity. Off-screen, he led a tortured double life. Though he was considered a romantic symbol, Clift quietly lived as a closeted gay man. Unlike many of his peers, he never publicly pursued a high-profile heterosexual romance to maintain appearances. Instead, he kept his personal affairs discreet, largely avoiding the Hollywood party circuit and settling in New York to avoid exposure. Reports suggest he often hired male escorts and sought companionship in private away from industry eyes. A devastating car accident in 1956 left him physically disfigured and emotionally fractured. His career faltered afterward, and his dependence on alcohol and painkillers grew. Clift's internalized shame, coupled with the pressure of hiding his sexuality in an unforgiving industry, took a psychological toll. Despite this, he remained a favorite of directors and co-stars like Elizabeth Taylor, who supported him both professionally and personally. Clift never married and had no children. He died in 1966 at just 45 years old officially from a heart attack, though it's widely believed his years of substance abuse played a significant role. His legacy today is one of raw talent and hidden suffering, a symbol of how Hollywood's expectations destroyed many who didn't conform. Ruby Catherine Stevens. Born on July 16, 1907 in Brooklyn, New York. Ruby Catherine Stevens, better known by her stage name Barbara Stanwyck, rose from an orphaned childhood to become one of Hollywood's most enduring legends. With a career spanning over 6 decades, she starred in more than 80 films, including classics like Double Indemnity and Stella Dallas. Yet beneath her tough, independent screen persona was a life carefully curated to conceal her true identity. Though she married twice and adopted a child, insiders frequently speculated that her romantic relationships were more for image than genuine intimacy. Rumors about Stanwyck's sexual orientation followed her for years, as she often surrounded herself with strong, fashionable women and shied away from traditional Hollywood femininity. Her closest companions were women, and she remained intensely private about her personal life. Stanwyck's portrayal of Jo Courtney, a lesbian character in Walk on the Wild Side 1962, marked one of the rare instances she publicly associated with queer representation. When questioned about her own sexuality, particularly by writer Bose Hadley, she reportedly terminated the conversation and banned further discussion, a testament to the secrecy surrounding LGBTQ+ lives during her era. Despite being a conservative public figure, Stanwyck navigated Hollywood's restrictive landscape with calculated silence. She avoided scandal but never explicitly denied the persistent whispers, allowing ambiguity to cloak her private affairs. Her dedication to her craft was unmatched, earning her 4 Oscar nominations and an honorary Academy Award in 1982. Barbara Stanwyck died in 1990 at the age of 82. She remains a pillar of Hollywood's golden age. Her legacy marked not only by on-screen power, but by the quiet complexity of a woman who lived her truth between the lines. Norma Jean Mortensen. Born on June 1, 1926 in Los Angeles, California. Norma Jean Mortensen, better known to the world as Marilyn Monroe, rose from a turbulent childhood in foster homes to become an enduring global icon. Her platinum blonde hair, breathy voice, and sultry presence made her the ultimate sex symbol of the 20th century. But behind the dazzling image was a woman whose private desires were far more complex than the roles she played. Though married multiple times to James Dougherty, Joe DiMaggio, and Arthur Miller, Monroe's emotional needs often went unfulfilled. Biographers and close confidants have long suggested she experienced deep romantic connections with women, including Hollywood legends such as Marlene Dietrich and Natasha Lytess, her longtime acting coach. While Monroe never openly identified as bisexual, many believe her intimacy with women offered the emotional safety she couldn't find with men. Plagued by endometriosis, mental health challenges, and addiction, Monroe often confided in friends about feeling alienated by the expectations placed on her. Her career was carefully molded by studio heads who profited off her sexual allure, even as they demanded she suppress anything that might deviate from the heterosexual fantasy they sold to the public. Her tragic death in 1962 at age 36 only deepened the mystique surrounding her personal life. Found in her Brentwood home under suspicious circumstances, her passing was ruled a probable suicide, though conspiracy theories persist. She left behind a legacy that went beyond the silver screen, an emblem of fragile power, unspoken truths, and hidden identity. Marilyn Monroe remains not just a cinematic legend, but a poignant reminder of the cost of suppressing one's true self in a world that demanded perfection at any price. Spencer Bonaventure Tracy, born on April 5, 1900 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, became one of Hollywood's most respected actors, known for his powerful screen presence and naturalistic style. He starred in over 70 films and won 2 consecutive Academy Awards, solidifying his reputation as a leading man. Publicly, he maintained the image of a devoted husband and father. Privately, his life told a more complicated story. While married to Louise Treadwell for decades, their union endured in name only. Tracy was known for his long-standing companionship with actress Katharine Hepburn, a relationship that shaped both their legacies. However, insiders, including notorious Hollywood fixer Scotty Bowers, claimed Tracy had intimate relationships with men shielded from public scrutiny by the protective studio system. Haunted by guilt, alcoholism, and inner conflict, particularly over his son's deafness and the church's teachings on sexuality, Tracy often sought refuge in work. Despite being a devout Catholic, he never divorced his wife and lived in emotional limbo, reportedly depressed by his inability to live honestly. He died on June 10, 1967, just 2 days after completing Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. To this day, his legacy remains dual-sided, a cinematic powerhouse admired for his craft and a tortured figure who bore the heavy burden of societal expectation. Katharine Houghton Hepburn, born May 12, 1907 in Hartford, Connecticut, redefined what it meant to be a woman in Hollywood. With her sharp-tongued, tailored slacks and refusal to conform, she shattered norms in both her career and personal life. Over 6 decades, she won 4 Academy Awards, still the most of any actor, yet rarely fit the mold of the traditional starlet. Though publicly linked to Spencer Tracy for 27 years, Hepburn was intensely private about her relationships. Biographers and Hollywood historians have long speculated that her truest affections may have leaned toward women based on patterns of emotional and sometimes physical intimacy with female friends and colleagues. Throughout her life, she resisted labels, but her rejection of convention spoke volumes. Hepburn's close friendships with women like Laura Harding and Phyllis Wilborn were deeply affectionate and enduring. Studio contracts and publicists discouraged any public acknowledgement of same-sex intimacy, forcing many stars of the era to construct facades. Hepburn was no exception. She never married nor had children, choosing instead a fiercely independent path. Her commanding screen presence mirrored her real-life defiance of the rules imposed on women, particularly those surrounding femininity and sexuality. Even into her later years, Hepburn refused to compromise, famously living alone in her Connecticut estate and shunning interviews that probed too deeply. When she passed away on June 29, 2003, at age 96, she left behind not just cinematic excellence, but a legacy of personal defiance. Hepburn remains a symbol of unapologetic individuality, someone who dared to exist on her own terms in a system built to control. William Clark Gable, born February 1, 1901 in Cadiz, Ohio, earned the title the King of Hollywood, thanks to his rugged charm, virile persona, and iconic roles in films like Gone with the Wind and It Happened One Night. But beneath the image of the womanizing alpha male lay rumors that Gable's sexual preferences were more complex than his public relationships suggested. Gable was married 5 times and had numerous publicized affairs with Hollywood actresses, yet whispers of his early involvement in gay-for-pay activities have long haunted his legacy. According to sources like Scotty Bowers, a former Hollywood insider who operated in the shadows of the industry, Gable allegedly had transactional sexual encounters with men in his youth before making it big. These rumors were fueled by Gable's reported discomfort working with openly gay director George Cukor, who may have known about his past. Studio executives of the time were vigilant in protecting their male leads from scandal. Gable, eager to distance himself from anything that might tarnish his masculine persona, projected an image of heterosexual conquest and bravado. Nonetheless, the duality of his private history and public persona reveals the immense pressure Golden Age actors faced to conform to rigid societal norms. Clark Gable died of a heart attack on November 16, 1960, at age 59. Though never confirmed, the persistent allegations suggest that, like many of his contemporaries, Gable may have carried the burden of secrets sacrificed for the sake of stardom. Archibald Alexander Leach. Born January 18, 1904, in Bristol, England, reinvented himself as Cary Grant, Hollywood's quintessential debonair leading man. With his flawless accent, sleek suits, and unmatched charisma, Grant starred in over 70 films and became one of the most beloved screen icons of the 20th century. While Grant was married 5 times, his most scrutinized relationship was not with a woman, but with actor Randolph Scott. The two lived together for over a decade in a beachfront mansion dubbed Bachelor Hall. Photographs of them lounging poolside and accounts of their domestic partnership ignited decades-long speculation about their romantic involvement. Though both denied any sexual relationship, their bond was unmistakably intimate. Hollywood insiders often whispered about Grant's bisexuality, with some claiming the studio forced him to marry to quash rumors and maintain his public image. He was fiercely private, and his responses to questions about his sexuality were often sarcastic or dismissive. In a 1980s interview, Grant famously said, "Everyone wants to be Cary Grant. Even I want to be Cary Grant," hinting at the pressure of living up to a carefully constructed persona. Despite the speculation, there was never a public outing, nor did Grant openly acknowledge same-sex attraction. Still, his legacy is tied to the secretive nature of Hollywood's closet during that era. His charm, wit, and elegance left a lasting imprint on cinema, but the guarded nature of his private life continues to provoke debate among biographers and fans alike. Cary Grant died on November 29, 1986, at age 82. Whether or not the rumors were true, his life represents the paradox of Hollywood, a place where legends are made but often at the cost of authenticity. Marie Magdalene Dietrich. Born December 27, 1901, in Berlin, Marlene Dietrich embodied the essence of Hollywood glamour and European allure. Her sultry voice, androgynous style, and roles in films like Morocco and Shanghai Express cemented her as a cinematic icon. But what made her truly radical in her time wasn't just her acting. It was the unapologetic fluidity of her sexuality. Dietrich moved within elite circles where queerness was an open secret. She famously wore men's suits and attended Berlin's decadent drag balls in the 1920s. Though she married Rudolf Sieber and had a daughter, she engaged in relationships with both men and women throughout her life. Notably, her affairs with Greta Garbo, Mercedes de Acosta, and other female artists were whispered about, though rarely confirmed. In Hollywood, her bisexuality was cloaked in ambiguity, yet her wardrobe and performance style challenged gender norms in daring ways. Dietrich's ability to seduce both male and female audiences was central to her mystique. Studio heads turned a blind eye to her private life, so long as her on-screen appeal remained intact. She remained enigmatic until her death on May 6, 1992, at age 90. To this day, Marlene Dietrich is celebrated not only as a cinematic trailblazer, but also as one of the few stars of her era to live her truth, albeit carefully veiled in silken shadows. Anthony Perkins was best known for his chilling portrayal of Norman Bates in Psycho, a role that became a cultural touchstone. But behind the fame was a deeply complex man navigating fame repression and a private life shrouded in secrecy. Perkins struggled with his sexuality in a time when being openly gay could destroy a career. Though he eventually married photographer Barry Berenson and fathered 2 sons, much of his early adult life was marked by clandestine relationships with men. His name frequently arises in the recollections of Scotty Bowers, who arranged same-sex encounters for closeted stars. These interactions, often discreet and transactional, allowed Perkins to explore a side of himself he couldn't reveal publicly. Insiders claim Perkins experienced intense emotional conflict torn between religious upbringing, Hollywood's heteronormative demands, and his true identity. His performances often reflected that inner tension, especially in roles where repression or duality were central themes. He was diagnosed with AIDS in the early 1990s and died on September 12, 1992 at the age of 60. Perkins never publicly discussed his sexuality, even as speculation mounted. Yet his legacy remains one of tragic brilliance, a man who gave cinema an unforgettable character while privately living with burdens his fame wouldn't allow him to fully confront. Lucille Fay Lesueur. Born March 23, 1904, Joan Crawford rose from a tumultuous childhood to become one of MGM's most enduring stars. Her real name, Lucille Fay Lesueur, was abandoned in favor of the more glamorous Joan Crawford, a name synonymous with intensity, ambition, and Hollywood royalty. But behind the polished image was a woman surrounded by persistent rumors about her personal relationships. Crawford's sexuality has been the subject of speculation for decades. Though she married 4 times and adopted 5 children, reports consistently suggest that she engaged in same-sex affairs throughout her life. She was linked to actresses like Barbara Stanwyck and Marilyn Monroe, though few public admissions ever surfaced. Studio pressure and fear of scandal kept her private life tightly under wraps. Her early life was marked by trauma, including alleged abuse and time spent working in questionable entertainment circuits before breaking into silent films. This experience may have shaped her fiercely self-protective nature and her drive for control both on set and off. Crawford was known to use sex strategically in her climb through the studio system, and she allegedly had affairs with both men and women to secure roles. Despite her troubled personal life, she maintained her superstar status for decades with powerful performances in Mildred Pierce and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Joan Crawford died on May 10, 1977, at age 73. The enigma of her sexuality remains unresolved, but her life reflects the harsh trade-off faced by many stars of her era, a career built on illusion, often at the cost of personal authenticity. José Ramón Gil Samaniego. Born February 6, 1899 in Durango, Mexico, José Ramón Gil Samaniego, better known as Ramón Novarro, was once hailed as Hollywood's original Latin lover. His breakout role in the 1925 silent epic Ben-Hur catapulted him to stardom, rivaling the fame of Rudolph Valentino. Yet Novarro's public image clashed violently with the private truths he was forced to hide. Though marketed as a heterosexual heartthrob, Novarro lived a closeted life due to the strict moral codes of early Hollywood. A devout Catholic, he faced internal conflict over his homosexuality, which he never publicly acknowledged. Despite his fame, he suffered from long bouts of depression and alcoholism issues, exacerbated by the pressure to conform. He frequently hired male escorts, reportedly not out of excess, but out of loneliness and fear of discovery. Tragically, this private life turned fatal. In 1968, he was brutally murdered by 2 brothers posing as hustlers who tortured him in search of rumored hidden money. He died at age 69 in his Los Angeles home. Novarro's tragic end remains one of the darkest scandals in Golden Age history, a reminder of the deep cost of silence imposed by Hollywood's rigid image-making machine. Marlon Brando Jr. was a revolutionary force enacting a brooding presence who redefined masculinity in cinema. With roles in A Streetcar Named Desire on the Waterfront and The Godfather, Brando's talent was as magnetic as his private life was complicated. Though married 3 times and the father of at least 11 children, Brando openly admitted in later years to having had affairs with both men and women. His emotional entanglements included a rumored romance with James Dean and a confirmed affair with comedian Richard Pryor. Friends described him as sexually fluid long before that term entered the mainstream. Brando once said, "Like a large number of men, I too have had homosexual experiences and I am not ashamed." In the hyper-masculine world of Hollywood, that statement was radical. His need for emotional connection often overshadowed traditional boundaries, and many of his relationships, platonic and sexual, remained outside conventional labels. He passed away on July 1, 2004 at 80, leaving behind a legacy both legendary and refreshingly human. James Byron Dean. Born February 8, 1931. James Dean was more than just a rising star. He was a cultural symbol of youthful rebellion. With just 3 major films, Rebel Without a Cause, East of Eden, Giant, he captured the restless energy of a generation. But his personal life was filled with contradictions, especially regarding his sexuality. Dean never publicly declared his orientation, but those close to him, including confidants and biographers, have long suggested that he had intimate relationships with men. Some reports allege he was romantically linked to actors and Hollywood insiders, though details remain shadowed by time and discretion. He was once quoted as saying, "No, I am not a homosexual, but I'm also not going to go through life with one hand tied behind my back." That duality, defiant yet evasive, mirrored the brooding personas he portrayed on screen. Whether his sexual encounters were explorations or expressions of deeper identity, Dean's private life was a maze few were allowed to navigate. He died tragically in a car crash on September 30th, 1955, at just 24 years old. Dean's legacy endures not just as a cinematic icon, but as a symbol of emotional complexity, sexual ambiguity, and the price of fame in a time when honesty could cost everything. Charles Laughton was one of the most critically acclaimed actors of the 20th century. Known for his commanding screen presence and masterful theatrical range, Laughton's performances in films like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Mutiny on the Bounty, and Witness for the Prosecution established him as a formidable force in both British and American cinema. However, the intensity he brought to his roles mirrored a personal life full of carefully guarded secrets. Laughton was married to actress Elsa Lanchester for over 3 decades, but their union was far from traditional. While they were deeply devoted companions, many within Hollywood's inner circle believed their marriage served as a social camouflage for Laughton's homosexuality. Although he never came out publicly, multiple biographies and testimonies, most notably from Hollywood insider Scotty Bowers, have corroborated that Laughton preferred the company of men and discreetly explored his sexual identity away from the spotlight. Despite his genius on screen, Laughton faced immense internal conflict. Homosexuality was still criminalized and socially condemned during most of his career. His repressed identity led to moments of depression and physical illness, especially as he struggled to reconcile his private desires with his public image. Yet his artistic brilliance never waned. He even directed the chilling cult classic, The Night of the Hunter, showcasing a visionary mind seldom matched in his era. Charles Laughton passed away from kidney cancer in 1962 at the age of 63. Though the true dimensions of his private life were hidden behind a curtain of discretion, his contribution to cinema remains undeniable. His story is a reflection of Hollywood's silent rules where greatness could flourish, but authenticity often had to be sacrificed. Tyrone Edmund Power III. Born May 5, 1914 in Cincinnati, Ohio, was Hollywood royalty. Handsome, magnetic, and impossibly suave, he was the romantic lead of dozens of Golden Age films like The Mark of Zorro Blood and Sand and the Razor's Edge. Women adored him, studios idolized him, and yet few knew the truth about the man behind the chiseled jaw and gentlemanly charm. Beneath the Hollywood polish was a far more complex and private figure, one grappling with identity in a repressive era. Though married 3 times and father to several children, Power was often the subject of speculation due to his private relationships with men. According to insider accounts, including those from infamous Hollywood fixer Scotty Bowers, Power engaged in intimate encounters with both genders, reflecting a fluidity that had to be buried to preserve his leading man status. His rumored affairs with male actors and writers were whispered in elite circles, but never acknowledged publicly due to the unforgiving social climate of the 1940s and 50s. Power was also known to seek out male partners discreetly, and reportedly found more emotional connection in those secret encounters than in the spotlight romances staged for media consumption. His bisexuality was one of Hollywood's worst-kept secrets, understood by colleagues, ignored by press, but always hidden from fans. Tragically, Power died young, only 44, after suffering a fatal heart attack while filming Solomon and Sheba in Spain in 1958. The timing, like much of his personal truth, was cinematic in its sadness. In the end, Power's legacy remains tied to his charismatic performances and the quiet battles he fought behind the scenes. His life is a sobering example of the pressure to conform in a time when authenticity could cost everything, even a career. Richard Franklin Lennox, Thomas Pryor. Born December 1, 1940 in Peoria, Illinois, redefined American comedy with raw truth, biting wit, and fearless honesty. Behind his powerhouse presence on stage and screen, however, was a deeply layered man scarred by trauma addiction and a society that demanded silence about things he lived out loud. While known primarily for his groundbreaking stand-up and roles in Stir Crazy and Silver Streak, Pryor's personal life was as controversial as his comedy and no less influential. Raised in a brothel where his mother worked, Pryor endured sexual abuse, neglect, and violence at a young age. These early experiences informed much of his humor, but also shadowed his relationships. Though married 7 times to 5 women and father of 7 children, Pryor admitted to having sexual encounters with men. In a 1970s diary entry, he even referenced a romantic relationship with a drag queen. Later, his widow Jennifer Lee Pryor confirmed publicly that Richard was bisexual, citing a 2-week affair with Marlon Brando, among others. Music legend Quincy Jones also backed this claim in a 2018 interview, further cementing Pryor's place among celebrities who defied heteronormative molds. Pryor himself once joked about sleeping with men on stage, something audiences laughed off, unaware it was more truth than punchline. He battled severe drug addiction throughout his life, including a near-fatal incident where he set himself on fire while freebasing cocaine. Despite these demons, Pryor used comedy as a form of resistance, turning pain into brilliance. He became the first recipient of the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor and remains one of comedy's greatest legends. Richard Pryor died on December 10, 2005, from a heart attack, having spent his later years fighting multiple sclerosis. His legacy is not just comedic, it's revolutionary, vulnerable, and unapologetically real. Roy Harold Scherer Jr. Born Roy Harold Scherer Jr. on November 17, 1925, in Winnetka, Illinois, was the epitome of Hollywood masculinity. Tall, ruggedly handsome, and impossibly suave, Hudson starred in over 70 films and television productions, including Pillow Talk Giant and All That Heaven Allows. To audiences, he was the quintessential romantic lead. But privately, Hudson lived a life of secrecy, hiding his homosexuality in an era where coming out would mean professional ruin. Universal Pictures orchestrated a complete transformation for him, changing his name, his voice, and his public persona. Behind the scenes, however, Hudson was part of Hollywood's underground gay community. He had multiple relationships with men, including long-term partners, but these were fiercely hidden. His 1955 marriage to Phyllis Gates, the secretary of his agent, is widely believed to have been a studio-arranged union meant to dispel rumors and protect his image. Gates herself suspected Hudson's sexuality and reportedly hired a private investigator to gather proof. Hudson's sexual identity only became public through tragedy. In 1985, he became the first major celebrity to die of complications from AIDS at just 59 years old. The announcement shocked the world and shattered the illusion Hollywood had carefully maintained. His diagnosis forced America to confront both the AIDS epidemic and the stigma surrounding it. Many credit Hudson's death with humanizing the disease, bringing much-needed attention and empathy to the crisis. Hudson's legacy is one of both immense talent and heartbreaking constraint. He spent his entire life shaping a persona that audiences adored while being unable to live his full truth. Today, he's remembered not only as a cinematic icon, but as a pivotal figure in shifting the conversation about sexuality and AIDS in America. His life remains a stark reminder of the cost of forced secrecy in the spotlight. Raymond William. Stacey Burr, born May 21, 1917 in New Westminster, British Columbia, became a household name thanks to his commanding roles in Perry Mason and Ironside. On screen, he was the embodiment of law, order, and justice, stoic, powerful, and authoritative. Yet behind his upright TV persona was a deeply private man who spent his life shielding his true self from public scrutiny. Burr constructed a complex, fictional biography throughout his career. He claimed to have had a wife and son who tragically died, stories that were later proven to be fabricated. These tales served to mask his sexual orientation, which he feared would destroy his career if revealed. In truth, Burr was gay and shared a quiet, committed relationship with Robert Benavides for over 3 decades. The pair met in the early 1960s and remained partners until Burr's death in 1993. They owned property together, including a vineyard in California's Sonoma County, and Benavides was listed as Burr's business partner in many legal documents. Despite living as a couple, Burr never publicly acknowledged the relationship. In Hollywood at that time, being openly gay was often career suicide, especially for leading men on television. Burr's personal reticence extended into interviews where he carefully avoided questions about his love life. He preferred to present himself as a widower rather than risk outing himself in a homophobic industry. His colleagues and friends respected his privacy, but the truth emerged more clearly after his death. Raymond Burr died of cancer on September 12, 1993, at the age of 76. In recent years, his story has been re-examined as a powerful example of the double lives many gay men in Hollywood were forced to live. His success, dignity, and private courage endure as a quiet form of defiance against a system that demanded silence. In the glamorous shadows of Hollywood's golden age, these stars lived double lives, projecting one identity on screen while concealing another behind the curtains. Their stories are not just gossip or scandal. They're truths long buried under contracts, fear, and societal pressure. As times change, we're left wondering how many legends were never truly free to be themselves. What might their legacies have looked like had they lived openly? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support. Uncovered Tinseltown. Uncovered, where we honor hidden truths and the icons who shaped history, even from behind closed doors.